Good morning, baseball fans. Welcome back to episode 10 of Around the State, a Prep Baseball Alabama podcast discussing all things relative to high school baseball across the state. Coming to you from our normal time, 10 o'clock on Monday morning. I know that obviously I live in the northern part of the state. There's a lot of schools up here that are on spring break. I don't want to say the majority, but it seems like a ton of schools from my neck of the woods is down in around the beach area for the Gulf Coast Classic and some other tournaments there. Before I turn it over to you, Austin, just to see how you're doing, man, I do want to tell you what a wild couple of hours, I guess you can say, yesterday. And again, I live in Huntsville. It was, I think, 75 degrees yesterday afternoon. Went outside, enjoyed a fantastic walk, felt great. Last night had those strong storms move through. I don't think they were as severe as they were forecasted to be, which is a great thing. If any of our audience out there suffered some damage or anything like that, we do send our best to you, not trying to make light of the situation, but where I live, it wasn't as bad as what they thought it might be. And then this morning, as I'm sitting here looking out the window, we actually have a dusting of snow and it's still coming down. So, man, quite a, I guess you can say, maybe 18 hours, man. We've gone from 75-degree weather to storms and now snow with the dusting on the ground. So, good morning, Austin. How are you?
Good morning. I'm a little slow this morning getting up. Like y'all were able to go to sleep at about midnight with the storms passing through, and I got up at about 3 to track the storms as they came through the central part of the state and into Auburn. But yeah, luckily no damage, at least from what I've seen so far. So it's always good. And we just get started. And like you said, it's going to be pretty cold the next couple of days. So and with the rain last night, we'll see what games are played today and what the schedule looks like tomorrow. But this past week, man, I was telling everybody, the first 3 weeks I've been having to travel across the state to go see teams, and this past weekend, everybody came to me. So I was. It was a great weekend of baseball. The East Alabama Classic got started on Thursday and ran all the way through Saturday at Auburn, Opelika, Glenwood, Central, and Smith Station. So got to see some good teams. Got to see some teams we haven't seen before, and it was a good weekend of baseball. And there's some other good teams, I think, coming down to Auburn this weekend. I think you said Hoover and some other teams come down.
Thompson, I believe Thompson. Yeah.
Yep. And so you'll be down here this weekend for the coming down for the Auburn Texas series, and then you're catching some games on the way down from Birmingham. So going to get out once again, another week of baseball, seeing some baseball, and yeah, looking forward to another week. I know there's some areas that have already gotten started. Already 2 weeks. Some teams already 2 weeks in the area, so it gets here quick.
Yeah, you mentioned it. My tentative plan is to get to that Birmingham area Wednesday and Thursday, cover some games down there. My plan was to jump over to Fort Payne tomorrow to see a impressive Fort Payne team that we have not seen, coming off of a really strong week. They open area play against Gadsden City. I think Gadsden City is 14-0. That's my tentative plan to go tomorrow, but I don't know if there's going to be any games in the north today or tomorrow. It's brutally cold outside. And then before we get cranked up with our rankings and for that shop, man, I've got to talk about last night's semifinal, man. Whew, that was an electric atmosphere. I told somebody I was on the phone with, outside of the MLB All-Star game, that's probably I don't know that you could ever find an assembled group of talent on the field than you could see last night with the Americans or the USA and the Dominican Republic, man. I mean, it's just, that was star after star after star, man. What a game. Our boy 2019 Prep Baseball Alabama Player of the Year, Gunnar Henderson, got the scoring started with that solo shot for the United States. Tonight, you've got Italy and Venezuela playing. And the United States will get the winner of that game tomorrow night, Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. So, man, looking forward to that. So, I guess there is a silver lining that if I'm not able to get out to a game tomorrow, which looks highly doubtful with the temperatures, then I'll just make sure I get to watch the USA in the WBC championship game. So, yeah. So we'll get cranked up. We'll get rolling right into what you're here for. First off, as we always do, Austin and I, we got the same.
Ooh.
Pretty much. We're pretty close. Yours is darker, isn't it? Or it's the lighting one. Yeah, we got
maybe the lighting
a little different. Yep, we've got the same similar swag on today. Any hats, anything that you are interested in? And again, we've said this. We see more and more prep baseball merchandise as we get out to games. And we appreciate that. Again,
saw a Kickoff Classic T-shirt this week.
Did you really?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. If you are interested in any of that merchandise there, shop.prepbaseball.com. I will tell you, when we order stuff, man, I get it within like 2 days. It's a really, really quick turnaround. So hit that link if you're interested in any of that gear that's on there. Obviously, spring coming up, warmer temperatures. There's some pretty cool looking T-shirts there, as well as some hats. Some of the hats and things that you see some of our staff wearing as well. So, yeah, shop.prepbaseball.com. With that said, we will jump right into our rankings as we always do. Austin and I will take different times. I'll get 1A, 3A, 5A, and 7A, and he'll do 2A, 4A, and 6A. There's quite a bit of movement within the polls this week. I think we've got a couple new number ones. And I do want to make sure that people, we say this every week, okay? We're not looking at just records. And that is, I don't want to say we put more emphasis on that on small classifications, because we don't. But, we've got some smaller schools that are ranked with quite frankly, losing records, that all they've done is played 4A, 5A, 6A opponents. And again, it would be real easy just to rank teams based on their record, but we do spend hours, and I mean legitimately hours, looking up every single team, who they've played, who they've beaten, and who they've lost to. That is really, really important. We've stressed that over time. So again, there's no perfect ranking system, but we do like the teams that we have. And again, we can only rate 10 of them, and there's going to be some quality teams right outside of 10. But with that, we're going to go ahead and get cranked up in 1A. In 1A this week, we have a new number one, Leroy. Leroy last week, they were number 3. They sit at 10-2 right now after going 4-0 last week. They had wins over McIntosh. I guess that was an area series. It may not have been, but they took 2 games from McIntosh by scores of 17-0 and 19-2. And then they beat Enterprise, and that is not the Enterprise in Alabama. I do believe, and I don't know this, but I looked up, there is an Enterprise in Florida. So I think that's probably Enterprise out of Florida. They beat them 3-2, and then they beat West Marion, and I believe that is a school that's out of Florida as well. They beat West Marion 5-3. They did not have any losses last week. I do want to say we got one new team in 1A, and obviously had one team drop out. So Leroy jumps from 3-1 after going 4-0 this week. At number 2, Hackleburg, they drop a spot. They went 2-1 this week. And again, no slight to Hackleburg there. Leroy, impressive 4-0 week. Hackleburg went 2-1 on the week to run their overall record to 8-4. They beat Vina 20-0 and 18-3. And they lost to Lynn, another ranked team in 1A. They lost to Lynn 13-7. Florala, they jump up a couple spots from 5-3 after going 2-0 last week to run their record to 8-1. Those two wins were against Sampson. They won 13-6, and then they beat Walton 9-4. And I believe that is Walton, Florida. Almost certain of that. I know it's not in Alabama, but it is an out-of-state team. Staying put at number 4, and this is one I think that we need to make sure we talk about here. All right. Fayetteville went 0-3 last week, and they currently sit at 4-8. Well, how can you have them at number 4 and not drop after going 0-3? Again, remember, this is a 1A team. And they here are their 3 losses last week: to 6A Benjamin Russell by 1 run, 9-8, to 6A Buckhorn by 2 runs, 5-3, and then Alexandria, which is a quality 4A, won the state championship 2 years ago by scores of 10-6. And Austin, what were you told by a fellow large classification school about Fayetteville?
He said they came and gave him everything they wanted, and it's going to be tough for Fayetteville to bump down if they keep playing that schedule. I mean, we talked about Fayetteville in depth previous podcasts. They bring back over 1,000 at bats from last year's team. They bring back literally pretty much everything. They've got Ethan Jones at the top of that rotation headed to Lawson. They've got they've got a couple players going and playing at the next level. And notice, I mean, that's so in 1A, like sometimes that's it's different in 1A with you. And if you have 2 guys who can help lead you, they can lead you through a deep playoff run. So that's in Fayetteville, bringing back all those players from last year. It's going to be tough to drop them, especially if they continue to play the Buckhorns and Ben Russells and Pelhams. So, they're good.
No doubt. Yeah. And again, here's what we say, not saying we're going to be right, because we've been wrong more than our share, but just let it play out, and we'll see how they perform in the 1A state playoffs. If they're fortunate enough to get in, obviously have to get in first. Making a huge jump this week is Hubbardville. Hubbardville opened up their season last week by playing 6 games. They previously were not ranked. I believe we had them ranked 2 weeks ago, but we dropped them out because they had not played a game, simply because we had other teams we thought were more deserving. But Hubbardville was not ranked last week. They went 5-1 this week to jump up to number 5. They beat Addison 3-2. They beat Brilliant 12-0. They beat Pickens Academy 11-10. Phillips 17-1, and then beat Lynn 13-2. Their only loss of the week came to a quality 3A team, Winfield. We'll be talking about Winfield here in just a little bit. They lost to Winfield 5-0. So a great start for Hubbardville, going 5-1, opening up their season. Addison, they took a little bit of a drop this week. They dropped from number 1 to number 6. They did go 0-2 this week. Their current record is at 6-3. They lost to Hubbardville 3-2. There's that jump from Hubbardville, and they lost to Winston County 12-9. So Addison does fall a few spots. At number 7, you've got Appalachian. They win a perfect 3-0 on the week to run their record to 6-1. They are at number 7 this week. They beat Raglan three times by a score of 14-3, 13-3, and 12-2. South Lamar, they went 2-1 this week, and they currently sit at 5-2 with wins over Berry. They defeated Berry 5-3, beat Marion County 20-1, and then lost to Lamar County 6-3. Lynn, we've talked about Lynn a couple times already, playing some of the teams ranked above them. Lynn went 3-1 last week. They're now sit at 4-3. They drop a spot from 8 to 9. They defeated Winston County 5-4. Beat Hackleburg, that's number 2 Hackleburg 13-7, and beat Berry 5-4. And then they lost to Hubbardville again. We talked about that electric start for Hubbardville. They lost to Hubbardville 13-2, and then rounding out the top 10, dropping 1 spot this week. And again, they went 2-0. They drop a spot simply because, of Hubbardville's great start, having to get them up there. Teams were just forced down 1 spot. Brantley, after being ranked 9th last week, they're ranked 10th this week after going 2-0. They currently sit at 3-1. They swept Elba this week in dominating fashion. They won 15-5 and 14-4. Looking at some of those teams right outside the top 10 in 1A, you've got Athens Bible at 8-2, Otaga Academy at 2-4, Billingsley at 5-2, Ider at 8-4, Kinston at 7-3, Maplesville at 6-4. That's a team that you need to keep dibs on right there. I think Maplesville went 4-0 last week. Got some really impressive frontline arms. Keep an eye on Maplesville. Milry is at 5-5. Pickens Academy at 3-5. Spring Gardens at 6-7. Sweetwater, the lone team to drop out in 1A. And again, they went 2-1 last week. It was just Hubbardville, we had to get Hubbardville in, and someone had to drop out. And Sweetwater was that unfortunate team. They are at 8-6 overall, and then University Charter rounds us out with a record of 3-5 in 1A.
We move to Class 2A. We have one new team inside the top 10 this week, and it's a pretty tame week throughout the rest of the top 10. We'll start here at number 10, and that's with that new team who makes their way into the polls for the first time this season. That's Pleasant Valley. The Raiders, they sit at 7-2, and are coming off of they beat Donahoe this past week in convincing fashion in 2 games. Pulling it up right now. Yeah, that is area. So they started area this week, and they're 2-0 right now after beating Donahoe. So that's a team last year I think won their first area championship. So they've and I think they bring back a good bit of a young team from last year. So Pleasant Valley debuts at number 10 this week. At number 9, switching places, and 8 and 9 swapped. So that's really the only movement outside of Pleasant Valley coming in. At number 9 this week is North Sand Mountain. The Bison this past week, they went 2-0. Is that correct? 2-0.
North Sand Mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. They beat North Jackson 7-6 and beat Chattooga 9-0. And then we swapped them with Tuscaloosa Academy. Tuscaloosa Academy, I think, played
Northridge or Northridge, maybe. No,
a couple quality teams. They're at 7-4 now. This past week, they went 4-0. They beat Central in Tuscaloosa. They swept Aliceville, which is area, and then they beat University Charter. So Tuscaloosa Academy jumps up, and those 4 losses that they have, we've talked about it. It's Northside again, Oak Grove by 2 runs, and Fayette County by 2 runs. So the Knights have played a strong schedule and seem to, this past week getting into area play, starting to reap the benefits of that. 1 second. It's the having to find Ranburn's game. Just for those who don't know, we have Game Changer pulled up, and I'm typing each one in. But Ranburn, their Game Changer, is a travel team. So I just turn off my filters and pull it back up. I've got it right here. This past week, Ranburn, they sit at 9-4-1. This past week, they went 3-1. They beat Hanley, beat White Plains, and beat Vincent 10-0. And then we got beat by a Piedmont team who seems to be rolling right out of the stretch, right out of the gate. So they stay put as the top 7 stays intact this week. They stay put at number 7 after debuting last week. And then staying put at number 6 this week is Pike Liberal Arts down in Troy. The Patriots, they sit at 8-5. They're coming off of a 3-1 week. Their one loss was to Enterprise, 7A Enterprise on Monday. And then they swept Goshen in 2 games and then beat Houston Academy, a team who's had some good wins over some other teams down in the Wiregrass area. Pike Liberal Arts was able to beat Houston Academy. So they improved their record to 8-5. They stay put at number 6 this week. Coming in at number 5 is Red Bay. The Tigers are off to an 8-1 start, with that one loss being that 1-run loss to Hackleburg on opening week. Since then, they've reeled off 6 straight wins. Most notably, this past week they beat Hatton 9-7. They beat Sheffield 12-0, and they beat Decatur Heritage Christian 8-7. So, like I said, they're off to an 8-1 start up in North Alabama. Staying put at number 4 this week is GW Long. The Rebels sit at 10-4. This past week, their one loss they went 3-1. Their one loss came to Houston Academy, and then they turned around and beat Wicksburg on Thursday and swept Northside Methodist, outscoring them 36-1 on Saturday. So the Rebels improved to 10-4, and that's a team who this team, GW Long, and the next 3 teams are teams that we saw last week at the Small Town Showdown, so very familiar with them. Staying put at number 3 this week is Ayrton. The Purple Cats push their record to 9-3. They come off of a week where they went a perfect 4-0, played 4 games, allowed just 2 runs. They swept Houston County in convincing Mercy Rule fashion. They beat Trinity Presbyterian with an impressive 7-0 win. I think Addison Sin through the first 3 or 4 innings in that outing, and then turn around and beat New Brockton 22-2. So the Ayrton, after playing, after going 0-3 at the Small Town Showdown, losing 3 close games, they've turned around quickly and reeled off four straight in convincing fashion. And so that's Ayrton stays put at number 3. At number 2 is Lindsay Lane Christian. The Lions sit at 12-3, and this past week they played 5. They went 5-0. They swept Tanner in 3 games, which I'm sure is area.
Yes.
They beat Section 20-5 and beat New Hope 10-8 to push their record, like I said, to 12-3. So the Lions continue to roll, but staying at the top spot this week is Mars Hill Bible. The Panthers pushed their record to 9-2 after going 2-0 this past week. They beat Haleyville 3-0, and they beat Phil Campbell 3-0 and beat Haleyville 7-0. So didn't give up a run this past week and continue to look like the number 1 team in Class 2A. Looking at teams just outside the top 10 in Class 2A, you have Belgreen at 6-5, Cold Springs is 4-3, Cottonwood is 3-5, Geneva County is 6-6, Highland Home is 6-2, Horseshoe Bend is 8-3, undo Pleasant Valley. Reeltown is 5-6, Southeastern is 6-3, St. Luke's Episcopal is 5-5, Summerton Christian's 2-6. Vincent was the 1 team to fall out from last week's rankings. They sit at 5-6. Washington County is 7-4, and then rounding it out, Westminster Oak Mountain is 7-3.
Man, it's. I know I don't have pictures or anything like that, but it's just crazy to sit here. You probably seen me look out my window like 10 times. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of snow that's coming down here, and we're in March discussing baseball. So again, just it's crazy, the weather. So that will jump us into 3A. Okay, sorry about that. One of my USA buddies just texted me. He's down in Miami talking about the crowd last night, if you heard that ding. So that'll jump us to 3A, and I'm going to learn from Austin. I'm going to start at the bottom and move up. We'll start with number 10. And I don't mind telling you this. Number 1, we have the same 10 teams in 3A this week, but there was a ton of discussion for that last spot in 3A. Again, we didn't make any changes. We'll get to those right outside the top 10 in just a minute, and you'll realize who I'm probably talking about. But we're going to stay with the same 10 teams this week in 3A. And starting off at number 10 is St. James, a team that we think is really, really talented. I don't know if they've gotten off to the start that they wanted to so far. They currently sit at 4-8. And again, it's a team that's played some quality opponents early in the season. They went 1-1 last week. They beat Park Crossing 9-1 and got beat by Andalusia 7-3. They stay put at number 10. At number 9, we mentioned Hubbardville's lone loss came to 3A Winfield. Winfield stays put at number 9. Could very easily have moved up, but it was a really impressive week for most of the 3A teams. Winfield went 3-0 to push their record to 8-3. They beat Summerton Christian 11-1. That win over Hubbardville we've already talked about, 5-0. And then they beat Fayette County 6-2. So again, very impressive week for Winfield. Staying put at number 8 is Thorsby. I think Thorsby's won like 5 of their last 6. They've been on a hot streak of late. Last week, they did go 1-1 to push their record to 7-3. They beat Hale County 10-2 and lost to Montevallo by a score of 9-7. Prattville Christian went undefeated last week and holds on to that 7th spot. They won both of their games last week to run their record to 7-4. They beat a very good Wetumpka team 3-2 and beat Marbury 5-2. Again, won both of their games last week. You mentioned the Small Town Showdown. That's another Small Town Showdown team that we saw from 2 weeks ago. At number 6, dropping a couple spots from number 4, another Small Town Showdown team that we saw, Lee Scott Academy. They did go 1-3 last week. They were down in the Gulf Coast Classic 1. Now, I'll tell you this. They 2 weekends ago, They played a single on Friday with us. They played a doubleheader at 10 and 12:30 on Saturday, and then went straight from Northport down to Gulf Shores, and then played 4 more games in Gulf Shores. So they were really deep into their pitching staff. They did drop from 6-4 after going 1-3 at the Gulf Coast Classic. They sit at 9-5. They did beat Baldwin. I don't know where Baldwin's from. That is an out-of-state team. They won 15-1. They lost to Friendship Christian, a team out of a quality team every year out of Tennessee, 9-6. They lost to Summit. I believe Summit is also from Tennessee, maybe Missouri. I'm not sure. They lost 10-8, and then they beat White House, Tennessee, 2-1. So again, playing a lot of out-of-state teams. Lee Scott drops a couple spots from 4-6. Jumping up a spot from 6-5. We've already mentioned the Bulldogs of Piedmont and the hot start they've gotten out to. They currently sit at 10-1 after going a perfect 3-0 last week. Again, they jumped from 6-5. They beat Alexandria. That's a really good Alexandria team. I believe it was in their county tournament. They beat Alexandria 6-5. They beat Ranburn 11-2, and then beat Vincent 15-4. So Piedmont is rolling. And again, they jump up from 6-5. Also jumping up a spot from 5-4 is Gordo, the Green Wave, another small town showdown team from 2 weeks ago. They are at 7-6 right now. They won 3 of 4 games last week. Their lone loss, nothing to be embarrassed about, was to American Christian, a team that we have spoken highly about every week, highly ranked 5A team. They did lose to American Christian 10-0, but they beat Sipsey Valley 6-2 and swept Hamilton by scores of 8-7 and 12-2. So Gordo moves up to 4. The top 3 remain the same. Another small town showdown team, Collinsville. Collinsville comes in with an overall record of 10-1 after going 2-0 last week. Again, holding on to that third spot. They beat Section by scores of 4-0 and 13-2. The Altamont School, they stay put at number 2. They went 1-1 last week. They currently sit at 5-2. They beat Indian Springs by a score of 12-1, and then beat McAdory. And I'm almost certain Macadory's 6A. I know they're at least 5A.
6. You say they?
Yeah,
they beat them, or
I'm sorry, no. McAdory beat Altamont 2-1. Okay, and if I said that wrong, I apologize. But McAdory beat Altamont 2-1. And Altamont, again, with that 5-2 record, they stay put at number 2. And then holding on to top spot. And again, here's something very, similar to what we talked about with Fayetteville. Glenwood does hang on to the top spot barely after a lot of discussion between the top 3 teams there. Glenwood went 1-2 last week. They currently sit at 10-4. Their win was over Providence Christian 9-0. But their 2 losses were to a ranked 6A Spain Park club. They lost 11-4, and then they lost to Bryant, a 7A team. Or I think, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, 7A Bryant. They lost by a score of 7-5. So again, man, it's easy to look at that and think, how do you keep Glenwood at 1-2 after going? How do you keep them at number 1 after suffering 2 losses last week? Well, a 3A school loses to a really good 6A team and a 7A program. It's hard to penalize them for that. Right outside the top 10 in 3A, you've got Beulah at 5-2, Cottage Hill Christian at 7-3, Elkmont at 10-3, Excel at 12-3. And again, that's a couple teams that were highly into consideration for that number 10 spot. But we're going to let St. James hold on to that one more week. We'll see how this week plays out. Flomaton is at 6-3, Fife 8-2, Geraldine at 6-3, JB Pennington is at 4-3. Lauderdale County is at 5-7. Phil Campbell is at 8-5. P.R. Miller at 4-5. The Montgomery Academy at 4-8. Thomasville at 6-6. Vinemont at 5-7. And Wicksburg rounds us out on teams outside the top 10, coming in with a record of 6-5.
We move to, hold on one second. Had a comment. Mr. Wilson, good to see you this past Friday. Great talking to you. I'm already looking, me and Colin, I don't know if me and Colin are looking at coming down, I think it's April 8th through the 11th. So I'm sure I'll be seeing you guys for y'all's area series with St. Paul's. That'll be a fun one. So
It will.
Great getting to watch the Rams this past week. Moving on to Class 4A. See, we've got one new team inside the top 10 this week. We'll start at number 10. Trinity Presbyterian sits at 5-3. They went 1-1 this past week. We talked about back in 2A. Ayrton beat Trinity 7-0 this past Tuesday, and then the Wildcats turned around on Friday and beat Alabama Christian 5-0. And we looked at some teams outside the top 10, compared them with Trinity. Ultimately, we sided with keeping Trinity at that number 10 spot and let it play out another week. So Trinity comes in at number 10. The one new team who makes their way back into the polls, I think they were preseason ranked, fell out, and now they're back inside the top 10 is Op. The Bobcats jump back in at number 9. They started the season 2-4, but have quickly rode off 5 straight wins. This past week, they beat Wicksburg 5-4. They swept Bullitt County 19-17 to nothing. And I'm double checking, making sure that's area. It is area. So, and then their other game, they beat Andalusia, a 5A team, on Friday, 6-2. So it seems like Op is playing some really good baseball. After an undefeated week, they move up to number 9. At number 8 is Oak Grove. Oak Grove, I think, went 1-2 this past week, but had a good win. Played, I think, 3 quality teams. They sit at 8-6 this going into this week. This past week, they played Deschler, got beat 9-0 by Deschler. They beat Grissom, 7A Grissom, 6-5, and then on Saturday, after Grissom got beat 9-3 by Hueytown. So played 3 quality teams this past week, went 1-2. We keep them in at number 8, and that's a team from last year that reached the semifinals of the state playoffs. At number 7, Central Florence. Central Florence slides down from 3-7 this past week. They sit at 9-4 after going 1-3 on the week. On Tuesday, they got beat by Shelby County 9-5. And then an area play starting on Friday and Saturday. On Friday night, they beat Brooks 2-1. And then Brooks was able to turn around and sweep them 5-3 and 8-2 on Saturday. And, we've talked about that as we get more into the season, area is going to trump. If you win a series, because basically, I mean, that's the best way to get you can play one game in the season on a Tuesday and win, but winning an area series over somebody where you've got your 3 best arms thrown, who comes out winning that series, we believe is obviously a big indicator of, when we do these polls, of who's playing better at that time. So Brooks beat Central 2-3 this past week. We went and looked at Brooks, and then I think Hatton, has split with Brooks as well. So Brooks is 2-2 in area play. So that's a 5-team area, I think, with Deschler. That area is with Brooks, Central Florence, Deschler, Hatton, and Wilson. I think all of those teams.
And I think Wilson beat Hatton or something, I believe.
Wilson's 10-3. So that area is kind of gotten off to a weird start. So we bumped down Central. Brooks is just on the outside. We know, I just said it, Brooks just beat Central, but looking at the area standings, we're going to wait and see how all that plays out here over the next few weeks, and then we'll adjust accordingly. So Central Florence goes to number 7. At number 6, sliding up this week, is Montgomery Catholic. The Knights sit at 10-3 and are coming off a week where they went 3-0. They beat Montgomery Academy 14-7 on Monday, a game that I was able to be at. And then on Tuesday, they beat Alabama Christian 11-7. And then on Friday, they beat Brubaker Tech 11-1 to push their record 10-3. At number 5 this week is St. Michael Catholic, also making a strong jump. The Cardinals sit at 10-4 and coming off of a week there where they went 2-2. They lost to White House 8-7 and Friendship Christian 10-0, two out-of-state schools, and then turned around on Friday and Saturday and beat UMS Wright 8-5 and Theodore 7-2. So they jump up to number 5 and
Coach Bez has got them going.
Yeah, and they have St. Michael and Montgomery Catholic have played each other. I think St. Michael won that game 4-3 a couple of weeks ago. So,
hey, can you pull up that comment real quick? That last one. Yep, impressive week for Brooks, man. Another good outing for Easton as well. So, absolutely, Brooks is right in the thick of it in that area. But again, another good start for the freshman, Easton Moody.
Jumping up this week to number 4 is Bibb County, the Choctaws, last year's state runner-up. This past week, they went 4-0. They beat Holton area. They beat Fayette County 2-1, and then beat Chilton County 4-3. So, swept their area series in convincing fashion, and then turned around on Thursday and Friday and played 2 one-run games. So, Bibb County, strong week, going 4-0. We take a look at the at number 3, Westbrook Christian. I think slides up one spot from 4-3 this week. They sit at 6-5. They went 2-0 this past week. Those 2 wins, they beat Asheville 10-0, and also beat Asheville again 9-2. And that's that area again we've talked about. Are we getting a live reporting?
Yes. Give me just a second. I'm working. I'm amazed. I'm amazed at this snow, man.
Okay. 1 second. I got 2 more teams. Westbrook Christian in that area with Asheville, Etowah, Hokes Bluff, and Aniana. That's another really tough area. So that's but Westbrook Christian gets off to a 2-0 start in that area. So we'll see how it shapes out. Swapping spots this week at number 1 and number 2, trading spots again. Madison County drops to number 2. They sit at 8-3, and this past week they went 0-2. They lost to Hazel Green 3-0 and lost to Athens 7-1. But
I want to
have already built a strong resume. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, Austin.
You're good.
Right. And I want to say, Madison County loses 2 games to 6A area opponents. We know that Madison County is very good. A highly ranked 6A team in Hazel Green, a team that's been right outside the top 10 in 6A. So I was able to see both those games. Madison County could still hold on to that top spot, but we think Deschler's starting to hum right now, to be honest with you. So,
yeah, and getting back Garrett Reed and Jay Murner and basketball players who weren't there for that game or that head-to-head game earlier a couple weeks ago. And then the top spot this week in Class 4A, moving back to where they started the season, is Deschler. The Tigers went 5-0 this past week. They beat Corinth. They beat some Lausanne Collegiate 8-7. They beat Oak Grove 9-0. They beat Sipsey Valley 9-7 and beat Demopolis 10-1. So you said it. It seems like the Deschler is starting to hum a little bit. They sit at 11-3. Looking at teams just outside the top 10 in Class 4A, you have Alexandria at 7-6. They were the one team to drop out. Bayside Academy is 5-7. Brooks is 9-4. Cordova is 6-5. Del County is 8-4. Etowah is 4-10. Hamilton is 8-5. Hokes Bluff is 6-7. New Brockton is 7-1. Aniana is 7-4. Houston Academy is 6-7. Orange Beach is 5-8. Randolph is 4-2. Plainview is 7-3. Satsuma is 8-5. W.S. Neal is 6-3. West Limestone is 8-5. And then rounding it out, Wilson is 10-3. Brooks got robbed. We robbed him. Are you going to report?
Yeah, Brooks. It'll all work its way out on the field. That's what we got in Huntsville right now. Crazy. And it's still coming down. So, Yep. And remind you, it was 75 degrees yesterday. So,
yep.
So now I got to get ready to do my thing for 5A. Yep. All right, so that will take us straight into 5A. 5A, we have the same 10 teams. We do have a new number 1 this week in 5A. We've talked about the depth of 5A. There are really good teams throughout, but we think that it is a really, really top heavy classification as well, man. There are, I would think there's 5 or 6 teams that legitimately can win it. I mean, probably more than that, but it's a pretty top heavy classification as well. But we'll get started in 5A for the week, staying put at number 10. And again, as I said for 3A, just about every one of these teams or every one of them had very good weeks. It's hard for a lot of movement when teams in front of you continue to win and playing that tough schedule. So a lot of teams stayed put. I know that I think there's only a couple changes here staying put at number 10 is Shelby County. They went 2-0 last week. They now sit at 9-3. They beat Central Florence last week, 9-5. One of our scouts was there at that game. They played at Coleman High School on the turf just to be able to get a game in after the rains. And they also beat Lincoln by a score of 7-3. Moody stays put at number 9. They went 2-2 last week. They have run their record to 10-3 over the first 3 weeks of the season. Last week they beat Springville 1-0 in a pitcher's duel, and then they beat Springville twice. They beat them 1-0 and 12-4, and then they lost to 6A Pell City 4-1, a really good Pell City team, and then lost to 6A McAdory 5-4. So again, both of their losses came to higher classed schools. The Bulldogs of UMS Wright, they stay put at number 8. Their overall record is 7-5. They went 2-2 last week. They beat Williamson. I'm almost certain that is area play. They beat Williamson by scores of 13-0 and 10-2. They lost to St. Paul's 5-4, which we'll talk about St. Paul's here in just a minute. They lost by 1 run to St. Paul's 5-4. And then we talked about St. Michael's in 4A just a few minutes ago. They lost to St. Michael's 8-5. At number 7, the Leopards of Mobile Christian. As you can tell, man, this is going to make for some interesting play there in the Mobile area. In 5A, some quality teams. The Leopards went 2-1 last week, staying put at number 7. They currently sit at 8-3. They beat a perennial power out of Mississippi, Jackson Prep, 5-3. And they also defeated 7A Mary G. Montgomery by a score of 11-2, and then lost to 6A McGill-Tulane 18-5. And that McGill-Tulane team is a team to keep eyes on in 6A. So again, both of Mobile Christian beat a quality 7A club and was beaten by a quality 6A club. So we're not going to punish them for the loss there. Staying put at number 6, going 2-0 is Briarwood Christian. They currently sit at 8-4. They beat John Carroll Catholic by a score of 15-5, and then beat Leeds 5-4, a team that I saw a couple weeks ago, a team that I think that's a pretty deep team as well there in the greater Birmingham area. Staying put at number 5 after going 2-1 last week is Demopolis. Demopolis, you mentioned it earlier, their one loss was to 4A number 1 Deschler by a score of 10-1. They did win 2 games on the week, beating Thomasville 10-5 and beating Sipsey Valley by a score of 12-4. And again, their record is at 8-4. Staying put at number 4. Again, there's a lot of staying put so far in 5A. St. Paul's, they stay put at number 4 after going 2-0 last week. They currently sit at 7-2. Last week's wins were against UMS Wright. That's number 8 UMS Wright by a score of 5-4, which I mentioned previously. And then they beat 7A Mary G. Montgomery by a score of 5-2. Again, just another quality opponent there in the Mobile area. Dropping a spot. And again, this is a situation where you're going to say, how can Northside drop from 2-3 after going 1-0 last week? And their lone win was a 15-2 win over 7A defending state champs Tuscaloosa County. It's nothing disrespectful towards Northside. It's just based on, the other high-end teams here in 5A, specifically Faith Academy, which we'll talk about. Austin saw them in numerous games this week. And number one, we already knew, and we had been talking for weeks how good we thought Faith Academy was. When Austin saw them, it basically just it reiterated the point for him that he knew, that Faith Academy is legit title contender. So Northside, don't read too much into that. Again, an undefeated week beating Tuscaloosa County. Everything plays out on its own. Dropping from 2 to 1 is American Christian. And again, I don't think we need to talk much about American Christian and what we think about American Christian. If you take a deep dive into these rankings, I mean, you've got number 2, American Christian, number 3, Northside in the same area. And then you've got number 1, Faith Academy, number 4, St. Paul's, and number 7, Mobile Christian in the same area. So again, whether you're ranked 1, 4, 3, 7, it doesn't matter. It's going to be played out on the field. It's just unfortunate that a lot of these top teams are in the same area. But back to American Christian, they did go 2-2. They've run their overall record to 11-6. Again, they beat Gordo 10-0 and beat 7A Central Phoenix City 3-1. And they lost to 2 7A teams. They lost to Opelika 3-2, and then lost to Enterprise 11-6. Again, American Christian could very well be ranked number 1. But again, after seeing them in person, Austin just thinks that right now with the pitching depth and lineup depth 1 through 9, that the Rams of Faith Academy, man, deserve that top ranking. They did go a perfect 3-0 this week with an overall record of 7-4. They jump up a couple spots from number 3, as we've already talked about. Again, they did not lose on the week. They beat 7A Auburn 8-1. 7A Smith Station 14-1, and then beat 6A Chelsea by a score of 4-3. Austin, you want to pull up? I'm sorry, you got it. Anything else you saw? Anything else you want to add about Faith Academy that I have already said?
Really good arms.
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to put you on the
spot. Yeah. Brody Wilson up to 93 complete game. Probably not going to say should have had a shutout, but they were able to push across 1 run against them in that 7th. And then Christian Freeman up to 92 against Chelsea. And then you got Wyatt Lloyd. Wyatt Lloyd came in the back end, was up to 89. Latham Bodie, a freshman, up to 87. I know Riley Weileman can throw. They've got a bunch of other arms, and they can swing it too. They're junior, senior heavy, and then you can throw in the 8th grader down at the bottom of the order, and he can get home run against Smith Station. So Faith Academy they passed the eye test this week. So,
and again, I don't mind saying this because we could very well be proven wrong, but our 5A state championship matchup was 1 versus 2 right now. And again, that's not going to be easy. We've talked about the North Sides, the St. Paul's, and on and on and on. But some of those schools outside the top 10 in 5A, you've got Andalusia at 8-2, Beauregard at 5-4, Boaz at 9-5, Charles Henderson at 9-3. Douglas sits at 8-3. East Limestone is at 8-4. Elmore County is at 6-10. They did have a big win over 6A number 1 Homewood this past week. Hayden comes in at 9-1. Headland is at 6-5. Excuse me. Jacksonville is at 5-6. John Carroll Catholic is at 8-7. Leeds, we talked about them playing some good competition earlier. They're at 7-7. Lincoln is at 7-6. Madison Academy, that's a team that's starting to play a lot better right now. Coach Presley is getting that club that they've improved since the beginning of the season. They're at 7-5. Sardis is at 7-3. Scottsboro is at 5-7. Springville is at 6-7. And St. Clair County comes in at 7-3, right outside the top 10 in 5A.
We move to Class 6A, and we've got, again, just like in 5A, we have a new number 1. We'll start at the bottom this week, making their way, the one team to make their way back into the top 10 after being preseason ranked, Oxford Yellow Jackets. Oxford coming off of an impressive week. They went 4-0 this past week. They beat Jacksonville, beat Piedmont, they beat Calera, and they beat Hoover. Had a big come-from-behind win. I know Aiden Oyola had a big 3-run home run late in that game to help push them across to the finish line. So Oxford comes back in at number 10. Staying put is Saraland. The Spartans sit at 7-5. This past week they went 2-1. They played 3 games against Spanish Fort. They won the first game 9-6. Dropped game 2 6-3, and won game 3 14-11. And number 8 is Pell City, staying put there. Pell City comes off of a week where they went 2-1. They beat Southside 7-3, beat Moody 4-1, and then dropped 12-2 to McAdory. But you go look at that game, and I don't know if it was they did not play any of their regular starters against that game against McAdory. So they not going to say we don't count that loss or we're throwing it out, but it doesn't hold as much weight. Just looking at it, they got beat 12-2 by McAdory, but you got to look and see that they did not play their starters in that game. And then their other 3 losses came in the Kickoff Classic, and all of them were by 2 runs or less. So that 6-4 record doesn't look as bad as it may seem. Mountain Brook slides down this week to number 7. The Spartans come in at 11-4 this past week. I think they went down to, was it Mississippi or the Beach? I think it was the Beach.
The battle at the beach in Mississippi.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
On Monday, they got beat 7-2 by Pelham, and then went south on Thursday. They beat East Central. They beat Warren Central on Friday. Got beat by Fort Payne 5-2, and then on Saturday beat McGill-Tulane 11-7. So the Spartans come in at number 7 this week. At number 6 is Spain Park, the Jags. We're down in my neck of the woods. Played some quality teams. All week. You look on Tuesday, they beat Hoover, or they got beat by Hoover 4-3, and that was a game where they had a chance to win it there late in the 7th, but ultimately fell short 4-3 in extra innings. And then they can't come down to Auburn. They beat Glenwood 11-4 on Thursday. They lost 5-3 to Auburn on Friday, and then on Friday again they beat Opelika 14-8, and then on Saturday they beat Smith Station 4-3. So they pushed their record to 11-6. At number 5, jumping back up is Hartselle. I think that they were last week. They were number 7. So they jump up 2 spots back up to number 5 after a trip down to Florida. This past week on Tuesday, they beat Grissom 5-3. And then this past weekend, they went down, played 3 games. They beat Niceville 14-3. They beat St. John's Country Day 9-7, and then lost 6-5 to Bishop Snyder. And Bishop Snyder scored 1 run in the bottom of the 6th. That's a Bishop Snyder team that our Florida guys have ranked, I think, top 15 in the Power 25. So the Tigers played good competition this past week and seem to continue to be rolling along in Class 6A. Dropping down from 1 to 4 this week is Homewood. The Patriots sit at 11-2. This past week, they went 2-2. They beat Coleman on Tuesday, 12-7. They lost 3-0 to Helena on Thursday. Faced Jake Holderfield, big arm who hasn't given up many runs this past week or this year. So Homewood drops that game. On Friday, they beat Dothan 8-3, and then came down to Alex City. They lost 2-1 to Elmore County and beat Ben Russell 9-1. So the Patriots slide down to number 4. And number 3 is Chelsea. The Hornets sit at 8-8. This past week, another team like Spain Park came down to the Auburn area. But on Tuesday, they lost 2 games to Vestavia Hills. And then on Friday, they beat Smith Station. And then on Saturday, they lost 15-5 to Auburn and 4-3 to Faith Academy. And that 4-3 loss was really close. Chelsea had a chance to win that game, but Faith Academy was able to push across, I think, 3 runs in the bottom of the 6th or in the late innings to take that victory. And then jumping up this week from number 5 to number 2 is Northridge, team who we've have talked about extensively on this podcast. The Jags sit at 9-2. Just played 1 game this past week. They beat Hillcrest Tuscaloosa 15-2, and just for their lone game of the week. But I think that they are actually probably, it looks like they're about to start playing here in 30 minutes. I think they're somewhere for spring break.
I think there's a delay
Maybe.
down there. I think there's a weather delay down there right now. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. So Northridge jumps up to number 2. They sit at 9-2, and then they made the big jump last week up to number 2, and they make another jump this week up to number 1. The Hazel Green Trojans sit at 14-4, and are coming off of a week where they beat Madison County 3-0 on a game on last Tuesday that you were able to be at. Big time pitching matchup between Jay Stuckett and Colton Clark. On Friday, they swept Columbia in 2 games in area, and then on Saturday at the Trash Panda Stadium, they beat Russellville 15-0 and then dropped a 4-1 game to James Clemens. So the Trojans push their record to 14-4 and jump up to number 1 in the class polls entering week 4 in Class 6A. Looking at some teams just outside the top 10 in Class 6A, you have Athens at 10-3. Got some, they were in the mix potentially for that number 10 spot. Baldwin County's 9-5. Benjamin Russell's 10-4. Coleman 6-3. Coleman looks like they're starting to play some really good baseball. They swept Hillcrest. I think it was this past Saturday. I know it was this past week. But Coleman sits at 6-3. Fort Payne is 9-5. Gadsden City is 14-0. Great start there for the Titans. And you've talked about it. They've play Fort Payne tomorrow. Hopefully we'll see with weather and you potentially plan to be there. But you gotta know how to win in Gadsden City. 14-0 is impressive. So they're a team we're continuing to keep an eye on. Helena is at 4-9, but it's a 4-9 that they've played 13 really good opponents. They proved it. They can beat, they beat Homewood. They have the pitching. They seem like they're really starting to come together. They went 2-2 this past week, but have played a difficult schedule, so they're a team to watch. Hueytown is 9-7. McGill-Tulane is 10-5, a team that you talked about, led by Evan Daigle, being a big middle of the order run producer for them. Mortimer Jordan goes 3-1. They sit at 14-2. Pelham is the one team to drop out from this week's polls. They went 1-3 on the week. They sit at 9-4. Pike Road is 11-3. Rehoboth is 11-4. Spanish Fort is 4-7. Stanhope is 7-7. And Wetumpka rounds us out at 10-2.
We normally don't do this, but I'm gonna say this. Coach Deacon Metters just texted, man, said 1 versus 2 this Saturday, Hazel Green and Northridge. And he did say that they did get delayed down there at Orange Beach. They're looking to get started about 2:00 this afternoon. So it looks like there's a holding pattern down at the Gulf Coast Classic this week. Appreciate Coach Metters reaching out, man. Good dude, man. He's a good dude. Yeah. So, man, that will jump us straight to 7A. In 7A, we've got one new team this week. It seems as though these polls are getting harder and harder to put together every week because there's so much, and again, we talk about it. Kudos to these coaches that are scheduling, these games against higher competition. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we're going to 7A here. If you can pull up Mr. Mullinax there, if you can pull his comment up. If you don't mind, Mr. Mullinax, could you keep me up to date on tomorrow's games possibly? If that's going to go on with the weather, you can email me at sharp@prepbaseball.com. Getting to 7A at number 10, dropping down.
Head-to-heads mattered a good bit, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that was the comment I was talking about. Yeah. We've talked about every show about head-to-heads and all that. So again, thank you, Mr. Mullinax. I appreciate it. In 7A, Bob Jones, they do fall from 6 to 10. They went 2-2 last week. They currently sit at 8-8. They beat Westminster Christian last Friday, I believe it was, by a score of 12-2, and then beat Riverdale by a score of 11-1. They did drop a game to Sparkman Middle, I think it was last Tuesday, 4-2, and then got beat by Newton. I believe that's a Georgia team. I know there's a Newton, Georgia I didn't put it in there because I wasn't 100% sure. Got beat 12-0 by Newton, Georgia. Bob Jones is down at the Gulf Coast Classic this week. And this is usually, not to put the jinx on Bob Jones, but this is usually when Bob Jones goes on a legitimate run here. They usually start playing, not that they haven't played well. They have played well, but this is when they seem to really get hot during spring break. Jumping in at number 9, the aforementioned Senators of Sparkman went 5-1 last week and they currently sit at 9-6. We talked about that win over Bob Jones by a score of 4-2. They also beat Elkmont 10-1. Another high quality win for the Senators was a 14-10 win over Thompson, and then they swept Marbury 16-0 and 5-2. They did lose to Riverdale, Tennessee by a score of 9-3. So the Senators saw them a couple weeks ago against Hartselle. That's a really good club. They are playing very well right now. Went 5-1 last week. Oak Mountain, they stay put at number 8. They went 1-0 last week to push their record to 8-5. They beat Helena 4-1. While I don't really want to make a big deal about it, that was probably a pretty big game there with, Oak Mountain. Coach PJ Guy being at Oak Mountain, was previously at Helena. You've talked about Helena and how they can beat anybody, but Oak Mountain was able to beat them by a score of 4-1. Jumping up a couple spots from 9-7 are the Rebels of Vestavia Hills. They went 4-1 last week to push their record to 10-4. They beat Chelsea twice, 8-0 and 3-1. They also swept Dothan by scores of 2-1 and 12-4. And then their lone loss was to Tuscaloosa County. As you can see, we'll talk about Tuscaloosa County in just a minute. Their lone loss was to Tuscaloosa County by a score of 8-3. So again, winning 4 out of 5 on a week with those 3 quality opponents says a lot about Vestavia Hills. Dropping a couple spots from 3 to 6 is Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. Coach Gardner's probably not real happy with us. We still think that's a really good team at Hillcrest. We jumped them straight up to 3 last week. They didn't have a great week this past week. They went 0-3. But again, that's going to happen when you play the caliber of teams that a lot of these schools are playing. Hillcrest lost to Northridge 15-2, and then we're swept by Coleman. You talked about Coleman. It seems to be playing very well right now. Hillcrest lost to Coleman by scores of 3-2 and 5-3. Thompson jumps up from 7-5 this week. They went 4-1. Their overall record sits at 10-6. They beat Chilton County 7-3. They beat Huntsville 6-5. They beat Riverdale, Tennessee 10-0. And then really impressive win over Houston, Tennessee 10-0. Their lone loss, we talked about it previously, was that 14-10 setback to number 9 Sparkman. Staying put at number 4 after a 1-1 week are the Wildcats of Tuscaloosa County, the defending 7A state champs. They went 1-1. Their overall record's at 10-4. They beat Vestavia 8-3 and lost to Northside 15-2. And again, we talked about Northside in the 5A rankings, making another jump this week from 5-3. And again, this is a team that you saw on several occasions this past weekend. They went 5-0 this week, coming off an impressive 2025 season. They just continued to do the same thing in 2026. They sit at 15-1. Their 5 wins this week were they defeated Pike Liberal 9-1, beat Bryant 10-4, beat Opelika 9-5, beat American Christian 11-6, and then wrapped up their week defeating Central Phoenix City 10-2. At number 2, staying put, is Hewitt-Trussville. Hewitt-Trussville did suffer their first loss of the season last week. They currently sit at 11-1. They went 2-1 last week. They were down in Florida playing. They defeated the Providence School out of Florida 6-0, and they beat Lincoln out of Florida 8-0. Their lone loss was to perennial Mississippi Power Magnolia Heights. They lost 7-0. That game is a little misleading. It was 0-0. We game tracked that one. It was 0-0 for like 4 innings. Magnolia Heights pushes one across in like the 4th inning, I believe it was, and then they stretched that lead out, I think, in the 6th by scoring 5 or 6 in 1 inning. So again, that 7-0 setback was a little closer than the score looks. But again, a 2-1 week for the Huskies. And then continuing to hold the top spot in 7A, the Bucks of Hoover, they went 3-1 last week. They currently sit at 14-2. Again, playing quality opponents day in and day out. They beat Spain Park 4-3, beat Houston, Tennessee 1-0. I think there were a total of 2 hits in that game. Will Adams toward the gym for the Bucks there in that win over Houston. They beat 6A Gardendale 12-2, and their lone loss, you mentioned it earlier, they gave up a lead late to Oxford and suffered a setback to Oxford on Saturday 8-6. So that is our top 10 in 7A. Some of those teams right outside. Someone just asked, where's Auburn? Auburn has been ranked for the last few weeks. Auburn went 2-2 this past week. They were in discussion for a possible being ranked, but they currently sit just outside of the top 10. They are at 8-6. Baker is at 6-7. Central Phoenix City, a team that has really picked up steam the last 2 weeks. They sit at 10-8. Dothan is at 6-7. Fairhope is at 7-4. Florence, man, that's a team that has quietly gone about their business. That's a team that is one to keep an eye on. I know that I think they were 3-1 last week, and that one loss was an extra inning. I think they played Huntsville in a doubleheader Saturday. Both those games went extra innings. Florence was able to win the first one in extra innings, and Huntsville won the second one in extra innings. Grissom sits at 5-9. Huntsville, just talked about Huntsville. They went 8-9, they are 8-9. Lost to one-run game to Florence, one-run game to Thompson last week. James Clemens is 8-7. Opelika is 11-7. And then, man, we continue to say this, and this has been I guess an item of a lot of discussion, man. Prattville again continues to push that envelope at 15-1. Prattville and Auburn both. If we had a top 12, that'd be 11-12. But unfortunately, we've only got 10.
We felt like rewarding Sparkman for especially this past week. But they played quality. They've played a tough schedule, but with Sparkman's 2 wins this past week over Bob Jones and Thompson.
Yeah, absolutely. So that wraps us up in 7A, Austin.
We move on to the Power 25 this week, taking a look at the top 25 teams, regardless of classification. We'll start off at number 25. Saraland stays put. Number 24 and number 25 stay put. Saraland is 7-5. Pell City 6-4. Central Phoenix City comes in at 23 with a 10-8 record. Hold on one second. Let me pull up last week so it'll be a little bit easier for me. So Central Phoenix City drops down 1 spot this week. They sit at 10-8. Prattville comes in at 22 with that 15-1 record we just talked about. Bob Jones slides a bit down to number 21. They sit at 8-8. Sparkman is the newcomer this week in the top 25. They sit at number 20 with a 9-6 record. Number 19 is Mountain Brook. They sit at 11-4. Spain Park comes in at number 18 with an 11-6 record. Northside jumps up 1 spot to number 17 with that 7-2 record and a big win this past week. The Lakeside School jumps up 3 spots after a 5-0 week. They sit at 26-2. Hartselle, we talked about them. They jumped up 2 spots, continuing to play good baseball down after their trip in Florida. They jump up 2 spots to number 15 at 9-7. Homewood takes us a bit of a slide this week. They come in at 14 with an 11-2 record. American Christian is at number 13 at 11-6. Chelsea is at 12 with an 8-8 record. Oak Mountain is 8-5 at number 11. Faith Academy makes the biggest jump out of anyone this week. They jump up from number 23 to number 10 with that big week. Here in the Auburn area, they push their record to 7-4. Vestavia Hills is at number 9 after sitting at 10-4. Hillcrest Tuscaloosa drops down to number 8, sitting at 10-5. Thompson is at 7 at 10-6. Northridge jumps up to number 7 with a 10-6 record. Northridge jumps up to number 6 with a 9-2 record. Hazel Green cracks into the top 5 with a 14-4 record. Tuscaloosa County is 10-4 and comes in at number 4. Enterprise jumps up from number 7 to number 3. They sit at 15-1. Hewitt-Trussville stays put at number 2 with that 11-1 record, and then staying at the top spot, holding on to the top spot, is Hoover. The Bucks push their record to 14-2 and go 3-1 on the week, and claim the top spot heading into week 4 of the season.
Yep. So that'll wrap us up with our rankings for this week. We appreciate you jumping on just to conclude us here. Our next podcast will be next Monday at 10 o'clock, where we'll do the same thing we did here, release our classification polls and our Power 25. Just a couple of reminders. All of these polls will be released on our social media later today. Tomorrow, we will release our Mizuno pitcher and player of the week. We've had some really good submissions from coaches. We appreciate those high school coaches for getting those into us. Our diamond notes for those that were submitted by their coaches that just came up a little bit short, we'll release that on Wednesday. Our scout blog, as we get out to cover games every week, will be updated throughout the week. Again, there probably won't be much in there today and probably not tomorrow based on the weather. We'll just have to wait and see how that works. But again, be on the lookout for the scout blogs. Also, just a reminder that our summer events are on our website, prepbaseball.com/Alabama. All of our summer events are there, including our Yellowhammer State games. It's our only invite-only event of the summer. That's June the 16th at River Run Park. And I'm not saying this, I'm not saying this for any other reason than just to be honest that they are, registrations are really rolling in. Some really good, we've had added some really good players this last 3 or 4 days. And then the last thing before we check out today, if you're ever missing anything, the heat sheet, team previews, scout blogs, polls, anything that you want to see, you can scroll up on the black tab on prepbaseball.com/Alabama, hover over the AHSAA logo, or not the logo, but where it says AHSAA. And then everything that is relevant to high school baseball across the state will pop up right there. So that's your one-stop shop to high school baseball across the state. So, Austin,
good seeing you. Enjoyed hanging out with my Faith Academy people.
Yeah,
should see you in a couple weeks.
I know you talked about how impressed you were with them, and I obviously, for looking from afar, it's not hard to be impressed with them. So they made that jump this week. So, Austin, if you don't have anything, I will go ahead and sign us off here. For Austin Sharp, our Alabama scouting director, I'm David Sharp, the Deep South Supervisor. Again, we appreciate you jumping on, and we hope to see you at the park somewhere. Have a good day, take care, and we'll see you next Monday.